Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books. Hello and welcome back to Must Love Books podcast. Today I am here with author Joe Chianakas, author of Pride and Persistence, Singlets and Secrets, and Darkness Calls. Hi, Joe. How are you?
I'm excellent. Crystal, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
I'm so happy to have you on today. We have a author friend in common, Stacy Cade, aka S.A. Barnes, and when she recommended you as a author to host on my podcast, I was immediately all for it. So thank you, Stacy.
Yes, thank you, Stacy. I got to give a shout out to the Peoria Public Library. Librarian Adam is the one that made the connection there. So where I live, there's some amazing book clubs, and I've been hosted in person a couple of times. And the librarian reached out after hosting me to S.A. Barnes, and now she's come down to Peoria and done the same book clubs a couple of times. I just think it's so cool.
And this is why we love libraries.
Yes, absolutely. Adam, thank you, by the way, because he not only hosted, but he created book club discussion guides, both for Singlets and Secrets and Pride and Persistence. And he gave me permission to share those. So they're on my website. So if there are like other librarians or book clubs out there, we got reader guides for you right online for free. It's really cool. And yes, that's all thanks to the work of an awesome librarian. So I just am so grateful for our libraries for sure.
I love that so much, and what a great shout out. So, for
Thank you.
our listeners, I'm going to have you tell us a little bit about each of your novels. We can go ahead and start with your first one, Singlets and Secrets.
Sure. So, Singlets and Secrets, oh, this is just my little bleeding heart on paper. It's probably the most personal story that I've ever written, and I often unapologetically describe it as a queer Karate Kid story. So it's really fun to talk about in that context. And some people are like, "What? Are you serious? Really?" I'm like, "No, 100%. This is a gay Karate Kid tale, but it's full of heart and surprises, and I just absolutely love it." As a kid growing up, I mean, obviously I'm a gay man if I haven't said that, but I turned to martial arts to try to get stronger, both on the inside and the outside. And I've got a long background in history in the martial arts. I had my own program for over a decade where I was the sensei. It just was a really cool, we have a really cool part of my life. I like to say to my students, because I'm a full-time educator, not just in karate, but I teach it at college. I always say we have many chapters in our life, and I just love that approach. I've always been a fan of stories like The Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. I'm even wearing my Cobra Kai shirt today to get in the mood. I've always loved those shows and those stories. I'm a sucker for a story that's about the underdog, the fish out of water. If you remember the Karate Kid stories, so I have no idea because my students are like 19 years old, and sometimes they're like, "You're talking about the one with Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan," and I'm like, "No, no, no, no.
No,
Please
no,
go
no, no,
back 20
no.
more years." Yes, please go back further. But it's just a wonderful story of he's transported across the United States. He's got a single mom. He's trying to find a place to fit in. He's picked on. He turns to karate. He finds a mentor. He kicks butt. He wins the trophy, wins the girl. Oh, it's a beautiful story, right? I mean, who doesn't cheer for that? And when I watched a story like that, and then I lived part of that story, the biggest thing I thought of is, where are the queer heroes? Where are the gay, lesbian, bi, transgender athletes out there and characters that I also want to be celebrating? They say in creative writing a lot of the times that every story's already been written. I hate hearing that, because you might hear that every story's been written, but not through your perspective. So I approach a Karate Kid retelling of sorts through a queer lens set in modern day times. I picked the worst setting I could possibly think of. I hope this is okay to say. Oh my gosh, I'm about to say it. I picked the
Say
worst
it.
setting I could think of, which would be Florida. And I don't mean just the heat. I mean a lot of other things going on there. All right. But there's a lot of reasons that I would say that's not a great place to be inspired as a queer young person growing up right now. And so I took my main character, his name is Aiden. I put him into the setting of a school that is challenging challenging diversity laws. I was hoping it was going to be fiction, Crystal. I really was. I was like, I'm just writing fiction. And then as I'm writing it, it starts happening in the real time. I'm like, is this good? This is where art and storytelling are so important, though, because I get to use it to not to lecture, not to say, oh my God, look how bad this is, although I think it is, but I get to paint a picture of what life is like for a queer teenager in a school and a community where suddenly diversity is frowned upon. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want you to be yourself. And if you mention that T word, oh, get out of the room, right? And that is so unacceptable. And that's so the wrong direction, in my opinion. And so living that as a kid from the gay perspective, trying to meet modern times today and say, let me tell this story a little bit differently and let me show you why it matters. I get to use martial arts as a backdrop, but it's ultimately about becoming yourself, fighting for authenticity, identity, and justice, as well as a story of first love and friendship and all that good stuff. So somehow, if I did it right, I took all of that, packed it into Singlets and Secrets, and said, I'm starting a brand new series. It's going to be 4 books altogether. The first 2 are out already, and the third one comes out in May 2026. And I just think it surprised me in terms of I can't believe how timely it is. So it is not only timely, I hope people realize it is really entertaining. If you're not screaming and crying and cheering with me by the end of book 1, because it's probably one of my favorite endings I've ever written, then I just don't know if we'd ever be friends. But that's Singlets and Secrets in a nutshell, and it continues from there, and it opens up and tries to represent every part of the LGBTQIA plus community.
I love that so much. And you are absolutely right. They say art imitates life for a reason. There's no way to keep the two separate. This is something that I talk about on the podcast a lot, that art is inherently political as existence is inherently political. And it's not like you were intending to make commentary on the current political nature of Florida and, as that spreads around the rest of the country. But because art imitates life, like it has to be that way.
Absolutely. I mean, this started with Florida's Don't Say Gay law. So, to be specific for the listeners, that was the catalyst that really prompted the setting of Singlets and Secrets. I never say it's in Florida in the book or anything, but I just try to think of that community and that school where someone like me, I'm writing these stories because I lived the life of not being able to be myself as a teenager in a school setting. And I'm trying to tell these stories so that hopefully fewer kids experience the upbringing that I had, where you were scared to be yourself. And I want more kids, instead of crying themselves to sleep at night, I want them smiling and being happy and joyful. And that's all this is. So yeah, it became kind of a catalyst, almost as a warning to say, y'all, if we keep going this way, the stories where people are hurt just because of who they are, people can't even say who they are at work or school. We've lived that in our past, and sadly, it's kind of coming back, at least in pockets, right? And I'm just trying to say, hey, if stories can entertain, then yes, they can also imitate or perhaps reflect what's going on. So maybe we see it in people who really care about others. And I don't mean to say that in a negative way. I just think when it comes to empathy, human beings are so good about caring about their family, their circle, and their loved ones. But suddenly, when it's the neighbor down the road, the line breaks. And it's like, I don't care about you. And I want to change that. I want to change it to say, you're going to have a neighbor who's queer. You're going to have a neighbor who's non-binary or transgender. You're going to have all sorts of different kinds of neighbors. We can care about each other even if we don't fully understand it. And that's what the book is really about. The tagline for the sequel, Pride and Persistence, is what are we fighting for if not each other? And I wanted it to be kind of a rallying cry that it's not about me, it's not about you, it's not about one person's point of view. It's about community coming together to protect these kids. And I think that's what everyone would agree, that we want to protect our kids, protect our children, protect our teenagers. We disagree with what they need to be protected from. But maybe these stories can be a conversation that help us understand that
I
better.
think you put that absolutely beautifully. For one, it is about wanting to protect kids. You don't have to be a part of the LGBT community to be supportive and to care for children and adults in the community. And you don't even have to, be directly related to anyone from the community in order to just have empathy for others. Because in the end, don't we all just want children to be safe and happy and healthy?
Absolutely. And that's why things like Pride matter. When people come and say, like, I get the weirdest messages anymore. It's unbelievable that some of the messages I get, but people will say things like, what are you celebrating Pride for? What do you have to be proud of? Or, the crudest ones are like, you're just proud of who you're
Yeah.
sleeping with or something, right? And I think to myself, no, no, no. The opposite of pride is shame, right? Think about what the opposites are. And if you're a queer kid growing up being told by others this is wrong and not being allowed to talk about it, that creates internal shame. Shame leads to self-harm or worse. At the very least, you're going to have significant mental health issues and issues of belonging and identity. At the worst, we're talking suicide. We're talking self-harm. And if we care about protecting our kids and people really want to say protect the kids, then recognize the truth of this and let's turn shame into understanding and pride. And that's why things like that are so important, I think, anyway.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you on that point. And I've seen the pride is just about who you're sleeping with comments many, many, many times. And I just don't understand how people can be so wrong on that because that has nothing to do with pride whatsoever. In fact, being asexual or ace is a part of the LGBTQ community and they're not necessarily sleeping with anyone.
That's a fantastic example, and I have to steal that for future talks if you don't mind, because you're absolutely right. Yeah, and it's the same thing. It's making fe people feel bad in the case of asexuality, or making people feel bad for not even feeling this way. That yeah, if you think about it from a big picture perspective, it makes no sense to criticize it. And really, it's again trying to. I just want to. I guess if you don't have anything that you've ever been ashamed of that culture hasn't taught you to be ashamed of, then you wouldn't understand this until you're forced to think about it. And that's what I hope a good story does, is it gets people to think, oh, I've never even thought about it in this context, because why would you if you're not queer, And I hope that's maybe the light bulb moments that happen for straight readers, because I have a lot of straight readers and they love the stories, and I have a lot of straight characters and I'm celebrating them too. But it's more about community and connection, and turning those inner struggles into something positive, taking trauma and turning it into art, or taking pain and figuring out how to turn that into joy. That's the goal, and that's what our community has been forced to do to survive. And I think that's a powerful message, because joy in and of itself, as we've heard, this is kind of cliche, but I like the idea that joy in and of itself is resistance. Joy is protest, especially in a world that makes us feel like we shouldn't have it.
That was beautifully put, truly. And I just want to add to that, just from my personal experiences with the internet, I feel like there is a huge increase in straight readers consuming LGBT stories, whether it's through, TV, film, or through books. And I just want to say that I think that is absolutely fantastic and definitely helps create a shift, a cultural shift to being more empathetic and being more open and understanding and learning about things that you may not necessarily have experience with or fully understand from your own life. And that's why I think uplifting gay stories is so important and why I try to use my platform to be open and diverse and just allow a different variety of stories to be featured and take place here.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Crystal, podcasts like yours and bookstores across the country and other podcasts, it's like even now, I think that it shows bravery and it's inspiring to say, I'm not just going to talk to this author or share this book. I mean, I'm going to celebrate it. And I'm really, kind of goes back to why we love libraries too, right? Libraries, bookstores, podcasts, whatever your platform or your audience is, we have an opportunity to share our stories with each other. And I think trying to go to someone's like, oh my gosh, I read this story. It was so different for me. And that's what I liked about it. And let me tell you about it. And I think that can really make a difference in terms of inspiring one's community.
One thing I want to share is so you said that the novel is loosely inspired by Cobra Kai and your experiences with martial arts. I have a teenage child, and Cobra Kai is one of her favorite shows ever. She's obsessed. She's watched it through like 3 or 4 times now. And I think it's so incredible that Jon Hurwitz, one of the creators of the Netflix series, actually did a blurb for Singlets and Secrets, and I just want to share that with our listeners. So, Jon Hurwitz said on Cobra Kai, let me try that again. Cobra Kai, we strive to showcase the positive influence martial arts can have on people from all walks of life, regardless of age, gender, or background. Joe Shinaka's Singlets and Secrets was clearly conceived in that same spirit. This LGBTQ martial arts story is equal parts fresh, heartfelt, entertaining, and important.
Thank you for sharing that, Crystal. Hey, I mean, that was one of my best days as a writer. I get these goals in my head. I think every writer does. And it's like, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if, all right, let me just throw it out there. Wouldn't it be amazing if Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid himself, read this book? You have these ideas in mind. And then I started thinking, who would even be better at, no offense, like Ralph's the actor. I want the creator. I want the writer, the one who's creating the content that character gets to speak to read it. And long story short, I reached out to Jon, told him I wanted to do. First of all, I'm a super fan. I'm going to my first Cobra Kai convention. It's like my first Cobra con of any sorts, to be honest with you, at least as a fan. And they're doing one in Chicago, so I've already got the meet and greets for Ralph Macchio and William Zabka, meeting like the whole Cobra Kai cast. So tell your daughter, because I've seen it like 6 times too through. And so those are big moments for me. But when I reached out to Jon and just said I want to do for the Karate Kid fandom, because you brought back a story that is 40 years old and somehow improved upon it and did this amazing creative content for the fans. What Jon and his team, what they do so well, and I really do think Cobra Kai is a masterclass in character development. I know there might be some literary people somewhere rolling their eyes when I say that, but I mean, you take the Karate Kid, Daniel LaRusso, and in season one, throughout the rest of the series, you've got a hero that is flawed, that is gray, that does some bad things. He almost becomes the villain himself at times, right? And then you've got William Zabka, the traditional bully, who is probably my favorite character in the Cobra Kai series. That he goes from this bully to someone incredible. He becomes the tragic hero because of his flaws. It's his flaws and his willingness to work on it and his love for others that just make him so great. And then they still have their conflicts all throughout. But the point is, it's a masterclass in finding that gray zone. We don't want characters who are all good. I want to write in Singlets and Secrets. I want my villains to do some bad things. I want them to make readers uncomfortable. So I have homophobic characters that are going to surprise you with some nice things here and there, because that's how the world is, right? It's like, wait a minute, you think this, but you did this, and I'm confused. Who are you? And the same for my heroes. For example, I've got my main character really questioning a lot of his thoughts on understanding the transgender community and those who are different. And I don't want his thoughts to be perfect. I want his thoughts to be flawed, because the best of us sometimes don't get it, and that's okay. And so I learn from their gray storytelling to try to make my heroes as gray as possible, my villains as gray as possible, so that they're realistic. And so basically, I've been complimenting Jon for, 7, 8 years, however long since the first seasons come out. And so I sent him a couple of messages, and I got that back. I fell over. I just sometimes take the risk. You just never know what's going to happen. Take the risk. And I like to say that. I like to say I take a lot of swings, especially as a creative person. Maybe you take 1,000 creative big risks, but if one pays off, sometimes that's all you need. And I feel like that. So it's a full circle moment for me when I think about my upbringing, going into karate, my criticisms of the original without having a lot of representation, and then this creator not only seeing what I do, but celebrating it and elevating it so that his audience maybe hears of it too. And that's amazing. So thank you so much for saying
I
that.
love that so much. So I'm going to have you share next a little bit about the second book in the series, Pride and Persistence.
Yes, so Pride and Persistence is sophomore year. Each book in the series will be a year in high school. So Singlets and Secrets is book one of the Unveiling Aiden series and follows him through freshman year. Book two, we're over the who am I'm coming out. We know who Aiden is, but he needs to communicate that to others. And I really play with that theme. It just kind of popped in my head. A theme that I like to write about is don't tell people what you aren't, tell people who you are. And I really work on Aiden with that, because the first thing he's comfortable saying is, well, I'm not straight. And then so I work on this, like, tell Aiden, it's okay. I'm talking to my character like he's a kid, right? But this is what we do in our heads. I'm like, Aiden, it's okay to say that, but I want you to get the confidence not just to say what you aren't, but to say who you are. When we open book two, he's got that confidence. He's got a boyfriend. He's in love. So it starts out on the highest of notes. And then I'm also book two. I really feature and focus on a specific transgender character. Her name is Michelle. She comes into our Washington high school community, transfers as a sophomore, and she's already a black belt. So in my queer Karate Kid universe, I'm introducing this new character who's really going to spice things up, right? But I love that gray zone. And so right away, our main character, Aiden and friends, they hear about this new student coming. They hear that she's transgender. And so they rush to protect her because they've been through some hell this first year and they don't want anyone else to ever experience that. So they rush to protect her. But guess what? Right in the opening of the book, quote unquote, I'm putting bad guys in quotations because I love the gray. All right, our bad guys have already gotten to her. They've already manipulated her in terms of saying we're in the right. This other group is the bullies. So it's really about two sides pointing fingers at each other and saying, no, they're the bullies. No, they're the bullies. And sometimes it's what you hear first, right? And I want to challenge that too, because just like anyone scrolling on social media that sees a news post and just suddenly thinks that's true, I teach this in my college communication classes. Be slow to form your opinions. What's wrong with that? Be slow, be curious, learn as much as you can. When people ask you, what do you think about something? There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm still thinking about it and trying to figure this out. And so I play kind of with that theme in the second book because Michelle is going to think she's doing the right thing. And our main characters are wondering, why doesn't she see that she's with the bad guys? How can she not see, especially as a queer person, that she's siding with the quote unquote bad guys? And that's because they can do some really good things at times too. And so we're going to play with this rivalry, and hence my tagline, what are we fighting for if not each other? I get to a point in this story where it's like, we got to stop fighting our friends, y'all. Why are we fighting our friends? We can be mad with each other. We shouldn't be mad at each other. And I think that's a theme that I want to express in the world because I know I get a little bit of anger at times, right? And as a creative person, I always say take that anger and put it into some form of art. So for me, it's writing stories. I hear a bad thing on the news, instead of venting on Facebook, I'm going to try to develop my character a little bit more and really try to create a strong villain. So we've got these incredible villains in book two, and they've teamed up with the person that our main characters think that they hate. And isn't that so fascinating that they are anti-diversity, but they love this talented transgender martial artist because she's getting them first place in everything they do. And so it really creates some gray discussion area about how do we approach these things. As it culminates to the end, I have this great big prize. We're going to do a $25,000 college scholarship to the college of their choice in this mixed martial arts tournament where all my characters get to enter and compete. But it's not the fighting. The fighting's the entertaining part, right? The sparring and the matches, and it becomes really exciting. But it's really what's going on behind the scenes and how they see each other as good or bad. That's the picture that I'm trying to paint. I think it's amazing. Pride and persistence, it comes out of a saying that I have, like persistence pays off. And my biggest theme in book two, besides what are we fighting for if not each other, is this: fall 7, rise 8. The karate sensei in the story, his name is Mr. Samuels. He's one of my favorite characters. He's also an English teacher because of course he is. But he's the English teacher turned karate sensei. Isn't that a trope in young adult novels? We gotta love our English teachers, right?
Oh, yes.
He teaches the students not just self-defense, but he teaches them how to fall. And it's a really big theme. So new readers, I hope you pick up on all these little things because I just love it. Once you learn how to fall, you'll learn how to rise. That's sort of his idea. He's like, we're all going to fall down. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to be defeated. And I wrote all of this before 2024, where it felt like we took the biggest defeat and loss as a community. We really fell, and we're seeing the consequences of that now. So I'm using that story to say, what happens when we fall down? We get back up. All right. Fall 7, rise 8. I don't care how many times you fall down. We're going to learn something from it and we're going to get back up. If you don't know how to fall, then you don't learn from your mistakes and you're going to keep doing them and you're going to keep harming other people in the meantime. I think that's more inspiring than anything because it shows that each of us, we're all fallible, we're all going to make mistakes, but each of us has the opportunity to get better. All of that somehow is what I've tried to pack into Pride and Persistence. It's about leadership, it's about fighting for each other, it's about learning how to get back when we fall. Without spoiling it, the end of book 1, you're cheering, you're crying, you're with me, we're hugging, we're celebrating, we're jumping for joy. Book 2 is a little harder. Got a whole story to tell here, but I promise you, stick with it and we're going to jump for joy again. Sometimes we just have to learn how to get back up from the mistakes that we make, and we have to learn how to get back up when we fall.
Which is a very important lesson, I think, for readers of all ages to really grasp and apply to their own lives. I've said it before and I said it a million times. Every single book has something to teach us as readers. Whether it is a life-changing lesson or not is really up to the reader themselves. However, I think every book has something to teach us, and this series, I think, is something that has a lot to offer readers, regardless of, how they identify. I think there's just a little something for everyone.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that so much. One of the teachers in a school that I visited and did a talk to, she reviewed the book and emailed me, and she just said, I can't believe I've lived this long without these characters. And she's a straight woman, married with a family, who's just trying to be the best teacher that she can. And she loves these characters. It shows to me that anyone can relate to this. We can connect with people on different levels and makes the story a little bit different, a little more interesting from anything else you've ever read. And yet you can still relate to it, celebrate it, and maybe you'll learn something from it.
I also want to point out for our listeners that Pride and Persistence was a 2025 finalist for the Imaginarium Awards for Best Young Adult Novel. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. That was a huge surprise. I think my literary agent submitted it to those awards. It became a top four finalist, and it kind of blew me away. So once again, I think that message just shows these stories matter. I get a lot of LGBTQ kids who ask me, should I write stories like this? Should I be myself in my story? Should I write stories like you do? I'm kind of nervous to put that truth onto paper. And I tell them, y'all, I know it's scary, but this is what's going to make you the best creative person you can. Don't hide from who you are. Don't hide from the truths you want to tell. Lean into them, and other people will see what you're trying to do. And that's what I think Pride and Persistence was able to do.
Is there anything you can share about the third book in the series?
Yeah, so it's titled Fearless and Fabulous. My
Love
favorite
it.
title yet. Thank you so much. I like alliteration, if you couldn't tell. And it's the most joyful in the series. So I mean, I won't lie, book two. But we've got some conflicts, and we've got some bad guys that people really want to see, I think, turn around and heal. And I go into book three asking myself this big question: can our biggest opponents find grace? Can they heal? Can they grow? They might think they're doing the right thing, but the moment they can see themselves through someone else's eyes, it becomes a little different. I'm going to get very real here in the third book. My main character and his friends, the thing they're going to work on in book three is rage. I'm so mad at what's happening to our community. I'm so mad at book bans and anti-trans legislation. I'm so mad that one of my favorite authors, well, let's just say I name a villain after her. I'm so mad that these things happen, and I put that into the main character because I want him to work on himself too. I don't want to be mad all the time. I want to fight for what's right without having this sense of depressing rage. I did a Pride event every single weekend this summer, trying to get out to different communities, trying to connect. And I think it's important to be visible. That's I have so many different things I'd love to say, but one of them is I think queer creators, queer professionals, you got to be a visible sign of joy and success. I'm not trying to be arrogant when I say that. I'm trying to tell those young kids who are scared to be themselves that guess what? I am happy. I'm married. I've got a good life. I feel like I'm a successful teacher and author, and it's not my queerness hasn't held me back. It's helped push me forward, in fact. And so all of those themes come together in this third book, Fearless and Fabulous. I want Aiden to overcome this rage and to overcome his fear and to lean into that fabulous part of who he is, while at the same time refusing to accept anything less than full equality. Let me tell you, there's a huge moment in book three, and I hope that it all comes together in a really joyful celebration to say that the people who hate us, let's question who, I want those individuals to question who's making them hate us, because I don't actually think it's coming from them. I think they become manipulated and radicalized from other sources, right? That's the theme that I want to show, that we need to understand we become what we consume. So let's put a highlight on what what we're consuming in terms of news, idea stuff, and then ultimately ask ourselves these questions. Is it hurting people or is it helping people? I want to get rid of the political labels and just say, is this policy hurting students or helping students? Who is it hurting? Who is it helping? And why? And let's just have those honest conversations. And I'm hoping at the end of book 3, we're going to shake things up enough to where the biggest villains might just surprise us. And of course, I love a twist. You just never know what's coming from your main characters either. It's a really fun story. And that comes out in spring. I'm working on it right now. We're in like round 2 or 3 in edits. And I'm really excited about where it's going. It's full of fun and twists.
I'm personally really looking forward to it. I cannot wait to pick up this series and dive right in. And so we've got a spring release date for 3, after which you'll be releasing the 4th and final, correct?
Yeah, so I like to work on things in advance. I like to know where my story's ending before we publish the previous book, and really make sure it all is going to connect. And I'm really excited to say that I think it's all coming together, and I'm hoping the series will then end, depending on how long the publisher takes, of course, hopefully by fall of 2027.
So from here, we're going to go ahead and shift gears a little bit. Outside of your more uplifting series, you also have a horror novel, Darkness Calls. Go ahead and tell our listeners about this one.
So I think we all have different interests, right? Some people are like, why do you write scary stuff? From my editor is the sweetest person in the world, Lindsay Flanagan. She's the publisher, actually, of the imprint Mad Cat that publishes my Singlets and Secrets books. She doesn't help me with Darkness Calls, but she's made this comment. I'm like, you're so sweet in these stories. How could you possibly write a book like this? Oh my gosh. And I love that because I think we just all have different sides to ourselves, and that's okay. I grew up loving scary stories. Darkness Calls is my new Monster in the Woods mystery. I'll tell you a couple of the inspirations behind it. Number one, my mom and I bonded over scary movies. So listeners, judge her parenting if you want, but when I was a little kid in the 80s, in addition to the Karate Kid movies, she let me watch Halloween and Friday the 13th. She loved them. She loved all these terrible scary movies, and she let me watch them with her. I'd have to cover my eyes at certain parts, things like that, but she let me watch them, and that turned into, as soon as I could start reading more, I jumped right into R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike in like 6th grade, but that was like, I don't know, I'm aging myself now. That was like 1990, y'all. And then as soon as I could, I joined the Stephen King library. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but there was a Stephen King Book of the Month Club type of thing. And I got my mom to pay for it. And I got an original hardcover once a month. So anytime you had a new release, you would get that. But then you'd get all these old titles. So I started reading all of his books. In short, my mom and I became the biggest scary movie, scary book fans you can imagine. And we bonded over that. My mom passed away in 2016, way too young. She'd passed away to lung cancer, never even smoked. That was certainly the hardest part of my life, I think, losing her. I we were really close. I was very, very close to my mom, almost stereotypically close, I guess, for a gay kid. My dad was the one who called me the F word, and my mom was the one who divorced his ass. Eventually, that's our story. When she died, it crushed me. And the first story I wrote after she passed away was Darkness Calls. I wanted to take my grief and turn it into something scary. A scary story that she'd be like, I just can hear her voice and said, Joseph, this is too much in this scene. And like, oh, this is great. And this is laugh out loud funny. This isn't scary. I can hear all these voices in my head. And I love that. But my monster in the woods is a metaphor. It is cancer, if you will. And it's a metaphor for many things, but I wanted a monster that could attack anyone at any time for any reason. And guess what? You can't do jack about it. I don't care who the character is. If it comes for you, you're a goner. That is my monster in Darkness Calls. But in fiction, we get to do the things that we can't in reality. So this is a blend of dark fantasy as well as horror. And there's this magical scene. So I don't know if anyone's seen Weapons. Sorry for my circular ADD brain, but Weapons is a fantastic scary movie told through like 4 different points of view. And as I was watching in the theaters just a couple weeks ago, I thought this is exactly the format that I used to write Darkness Calls. So if anyone's seen Weapons, Darkness Calls is told in the exact same format, and I swear to y'all, this was written years ago. But anyway, the main character's point of view, and then it switches to 3 other points of view for the full story. In one of these stories, his name is Teddy, and his mom's passing away from cancer, and I get to do, of course, in fiction, maybe what I couldn't do in reality, and that is use a little bit of the scary stuff and the fantasy stuff to maybe fight back to help others. So on one hand, I wanted the scariest monster in the woods mystery I could possibly get. On the other hand, I wanted to tell a story of atmospheric legend and local folk folklore. I grew up near one of the biggest cemeteries in Illinois called Springdale Cemetery, and I would get lost in there. I would make up stories as a kid, Bridge to Terabithia style, right? It's magnet. All these wooden trails go into it. We have a witches circle. We have all these little fun stories we made up about the cemetery. My childhood adventures, meeting the grief that I had as an adult losing my mom, are what converged to tell this amazing monster in the woods story. So yeah, I want to scare you. I want to surprise you, but I also want you just having a few moments where it's like, this is the beauty of horror because we get to take a moment to maybe understand death, to understand loss, to understand what we do to overcome it. How do we move forward and can we? Those types of big questions. So it's all in there, packed into this wonderful story of four teenagers who pretty much awaken to the memories they had as a kid. They forgot about these childhood adventures they had. They remember them as adults, and now they have to go fight this monster in order to save a bunch of kids who have gone missing, as well as to uncover a secret that the monster is guarding. And that secret is a real story from my childhood. That's the big mystery. It's a little bit of weapons meet Stranger Things, I think, if you put it together that way. And that is my little Monster in the Woods mystery. It's just the fun, weird, geeky read for anyone who loves scary stories.
I love that so much. I definitely am going to recommend this one for all of our listeners to pick up and check out and terrify yourself with the woods and
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, if you love what S.A. Barnes does in terms of that atmospheric, claustrophobic space horror, I'm hoping I can do that with the woods, that same sort of creepy, oh my gosh, what's happening here moment.
as a Midwest girly with woods in my backyard that do get pretty creepy at night, that creepy factor is definitely there.
Yes, I love it. One of my best friends, she said to me, because we go hiking together, and she said, "Is this what you think about?" She read Darkness Calls and it was her favorite of everything I've written. And she just said, "Is this what you think about though while we hike?" Because I'm not sure I want to go hiking with you anymore. Um,
Maybe actually a little bit. Well, Joe, I
exactly.
want to thank you so much for joining me today on Must Love Books podcast. And I really enjoyed talking about your novels, and I can't wait to see what's coming next.
Crystal, thank you. Thank you for what you do in elevating stories and giving them a platform. I mean, I'm honored to be a part of this. So thank you for including me. And yeah, I hope anyone who's interested, my books are available wherever, from whatever retailer you prefer. I always tell people shop local, go to your local bookstore and they can get these for you, no problem. And we got our audiobooks coming out too for Singlets and Pride. We did a nice audio release. I was excited about that because I got to audition people. I'd never had that before as an author. I was like, what? What is this? So we got a queer voice actor who's got a nice IMDb page and has done all sorts of different things. And it's like, wow. So we got a queer actor who's going to narrate the voice of Aiden in that series, and that comes out just in time for Christmas. So I appreciate your support, and I appreciate anyone who's willing to give these books a shot. And I hope that you all enjoy them.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under @Must Love Books Podcast. Thank you and happy reading.